Hello again, football fans, and welcome to a special breaking news edition of Not Miners Live. I am your host, Chris Dunn, and like I said, I have some breaking news from the RFL, and there's really no one better, no group of people better to discuss breaking news with than the two gentlemen that I'm going to bring on here today. So, again, breaking news in the RFL. Many of you are watching games right now as we speak, and we're going to get this out to you. But without any further ado, I'm going to bring in Alex and Nate. You guys know them at RFL Focus and at Chrome RFL on Twitter. So, there is some news today, and it seems like there is a particular team that we've been discussing throughout most of the first month of the season. And now that team once again is in the news, as just earlier this afternoon, we got breaking news out of Austin that the Austin Armadillos are benching wide receiver Maurice Darman. He is listed as wide receiver 2 on the depth chart. So it remains to be seen what the wide receiver room is going to look like in Austin with Darman now being benched. So I guess with that news, Alex, I will ask you, what are your initial thoughts about this move? And do you like it or do you not like it?
Right. So originally when I had processed this news, I was a little questionable about it. A veteran guy, of course. I think he was undrafted out of UConn, right? I was a little bit shaken about this news at first, but when I really looked at what I believe Roland had seen, a 33-year-old wide receiver, of course, right? He's going to be a veteran in that locker room, but only 112 receiving yards and 1 touchdown through 2 games, and he's the wide receiver 2.
Right.
That's what I feel was the deciding factor. I think with him being that second guy, or supposed to be that second guy on the depth chart, you got Levi Dixon with more receiving yards than him as a running back as of now, right? He has 130 and Darman has 112. He's averaging 52 receiving yards per game. And again, as a wide receiver 2, in comparison to Jordy Johnson, who's playing at a phenomenal level right now, I don't think that's going to cut it. That's what it ultimately comes down to. I just don't think they're getting the production that he's supposed to get.
Couldn't you make the argument, though, that with the numbers, the receptions, the yards, the touchdowns that Jordy Johnson is putting up, there's not really much that Maurice Darman can do, right? Like, isn't to some degree Jordy Johnson just stealing all of those potential opportunities that Darman could be getting?
Yeah, I could absolutely see that, right? But I think the tandem that they're supposed to be, even though Jordy Johnson is taking up all those targets, I think there should be a role that Darman should be able to fill. And with 112 receiving yards as of week 2, I don't think he's been able to step up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really an interesting situation. Nate, what were your initial reactions when you saw this? And do you have any idea of what the future might look like as far as the wide receiver position in Austin?
At first I was kind of confused, but then as looking at the depth chart, I saw, they have Chris Braun. In the last games, he had like 109, receiving yards, 58.7 yards per game, which is more than Maurice Darman is doing. So maybe what Roland is doing is like putting Chris Braun at receiver 2. He is younger, so and he has more upside because of his age. So maybe he's just putting Chris Braun in a higher position because he feels like that it complements
Jordy Johnson. Yeah.
Jordy Johnson more. Especially since Chris Braun, at least right now, is doing, I feel like, a bit better than Darman right now. And especially, like I said before, like his age. So maybe that's a factor in that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that has to be, right? I think you both said it, and I felt it when I first saw the news and I first listened and heard it. My initial reaction was, why? And then I kind of looked at it and was like, well, Chris Braun is a good receiver. Chris Braun hasn't really had opportunities. And I think if you look at the team, how they're constructed, you guys both mentioned it. Maurice Darman is not getting any younger. He's 33 years old. So it's not long before Chris Braun surpasses Maurice Darman in terms of overall ranking anyway. And at the age of 23, if you could get him to, that mid 80s and you can boost some of that route running before he hits that like magical age 25, right? That's typically the age where we start to see guys lose the significant progression that they might make. Typically 21 to 25 is when you're really progressing. And then after you hit 25, you kind of, you might go up a little bit year by year, but at that point, to a lot of us, that's kind of who you are. The interesting thing for me is Maurice Darman still has 2 years on the deal. So he's not a free agent at the end of this year. He's still there on the roster. So if you're going to make this move, which again, I don't disagree with, I'm kind of like, I'm good either way. Right. I think if you wanted to put Maurice Darman out there as wide receiver 2 and maybe try to find, better formations and better sets to get him more involved because you really liked him, I'm on board with that. But I'm also on board with this in that Chris Braun, like you guys said, is a lot younger. Let him develop. Let him take over. He's obviously the wide receiver 2 of the future. Let's just start that now. But because Darman is still under contract, I question why you announce this move right now, and for 2 reasons. One, you've just absolutely destroyed any kind of trade value that Maurice Darman has whatsoever, right? Like,
yeah,
in my opinion, why not float Maurice Darman's name out there in trade rumors, in trade ideas, right? Like
Right.
at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
guys, we were all talking about it at the beginning of the year. Jordy Johnson's name was on the trade block. Well, that went away pretty quickly. So how difficult would it be to just say, you know what? I'm not really willing to get rid of Jordy Johnson. However, I do look at Maurice Darman. He's an 84 overall. He's got 92 speed. He's got to have some value to some team out there. Can I get a 4th round pick for a contending team that might be looking to add some depth to the wide receiver position? So I guess, Alex, I'll go back to you. Like, that was my kind of confusion, was what now? Because Maurice Darman is now just going to sit on the bench and he's not going to take over that job next year. And then next year he's going to be on the bench eating up salary. And there's no team out there that's going to try to trade for him, because why? I'll give you a 7th round pick for him if you want. Clearly he has no value to you if you're going to demote him. So I guess, Alex, any idea what, the thought process in your mind might have been in terms of making this move now?
Yeah, I'm with you here, man. I think, as what I saw, Neon Sports had his trade value at a late 3rd round pick. Right. So if they were to advertise him correctly, I think at best they would have got a late 3rd round pick. Now you're throwing him under the bus. He's down to, right, like you said, a late 6th round, maybe early 7th round pick. And I think had he stayed at that value that that Neon Sports had boosted him to, a late 3rd round pick, you could have maybe finessed through the draft. I'm not sure what you would plan to do with other star players. I know Jordy Johnson's of course going to stay. I'm not sure of the future of Luis, but what you've done with Darman is almost taking him out of value completely to the team. And I don't think that what you would get in return for I should put it like this. How you have marketed him towards other teams is
Right.
now what you're going to receive, what you're going to get in return, for lack of a better phrase.
No, you're 100% right. And I think, Nate, you'll agree. Like, it is kind of all about how you position yourself and all about how you market yourself. And if you've got an 84 wide receiver, market him like an 84 wide receiver. I get that he's 33 years old, but you know what? There's got to be a contending team out there that come week 7 is going to be like, I can make a run at the postseason this year. And my wide receiver number 2 is a 79. I could pick up Maurice Darman, make a playoff push, and only give up a 3rd or a 4th round pick. I might consider that. But now, what is the value? Like, clearly, the Armadillos have shown that there's just no value in Darman, not to mention the fact that what is this going to do to his morale, right? Like, when you actually physically move him, when you demote him on the depth chart, that's going to affect his morale. And so now we're talking about an 84 receiver that's probably going to be out there playing like an 83 or maybe even at worst an 82. And so I just question it. And Nate, you know as well as anybody, in this present day and age, it's all about how you market yourself. So, I mean, do you disagree in any way with any of what Alex and I have said here? Is there something that we might be missing? Like what's going on here?
The only thing I can really think of is maybe like the age, because he's the oldest player on the offense, really. One of the oldest players, 33, but I still think he has some use to the team. Like, I don't really think benching him is the proper thing to do, in my opinion, because he still has some use. He's still a good player. He's not like a washed up player in any means. So I feel like he still has a use to this team or another team. And I do feel like benching him will severely does lower his trade value, because and also his morale too. And he could still be a veteran presence in the locker room. Yes, all the wide receivers are under the age of 27, but he still is useful. I mean, he's not bad of a player in any means. I feel like he's not holding the wide receiver core down in any way. So I don't really understand this either, because he's still a use to this team. Yes, he's 33, but he still has some decent stats up on the board. It's not like he's
right. I think a lot of it was a snap decision made simply because 2 things. 1, they lost last week, and 2, he had 0 catches. I think week 1, I think Alex, you mentioned it. Week 1, I think he had 5 catches. Week 2, he had 5 catches. 5 catches for 60 yards, 5 catches for 47 yards, whatever. That's not going to win championships. You're not going to make the Pro Bowl with doing that every week, but that is solid contributions from a wide receiver too. And when you're winning, you'll take it. But I think part of the problem here is tough loss to the Dreadnoughts. There's no production whatsoever from Darman. And I think a lot of this was just a little bit of a snap decision that was made in the heat of the moment. For those of you that, are fans of the Armadillos and fans of Maurice Darman, I don't know what the future holds in Austin. And I don't know what the value is to other contending teams to make a move. I have a feeling that this might harm the Armadillos in the end, only because they've got all this dead money that's now going to be sitting on the roster, and they're not necessarily getting a lot of playing time. Now, guys, we could be completely wrong. Maurice Darman could slide into the wide receiver 3 role. He could find himself in the slot, and he could suddenly have a bit of a resurgence, and we could all look foolish in 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. But at the age of 33, for all the reasons that we've said, I think that is less likely than it is Chris Braun steps in, takes over that role, and if you're willing to demote Maurice Darman from wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3, I guess there's also the question that, are you willing to demote him to wide receiver 4? Because if you look at the wide receiver room and you look at the depth chart in Austin, yes, Chris Braun is a 23-year-old, 79 overall with 95 speed. But Justin Blake is a 22-year-old, 75 overall with 93 speed. So, the difference between the difference between Chris Braun and Justin Blake isn't that great. And so if you're willing to demote Darman to give Chris Braun more run, well, then wouldn't you also then consider putting Justin Blake in the slot role and just getting rid of Darman altogether? Like, I guess in your opinion, Nate, I'll go to you first here. Do you think that Maurice Darman is a shoe-in lock for that wide receiver 3 and he'll get some run in 3 wide sets? Or do you think, like I said, does this open the door for even Justin Blake to get more playing time as that wide receiver 3?
Yeah, I think it opens the door for Justin Blake to get more time because, he has he's more of an upside, 22 years old, 75 overall, 93 speed. He has time to develop and to get better. So I have a feeling like he's going to Chris Braun is going to be wide receiver 2, then Justin Blake wide receiver 3.
And then Darman would then slide into wide receiver 4, which I don't, it looks like most of the offensive play sets they run, there's not 4 wide sets. There's only a couple playbooks out there where you actually have 4 true wide receivers on the field at a time. So, I mean, at that point, Darman is, I don't want to say he's useless, right? I mean, the Armadillos are shocking. They might be like the Cinderella of the RFL world right now, right? I mean, no one thought they were going to start 2-0. The fact that they're still 2-1, they played well in that loss. So I still think that we are looking at them as a Cinderella story. So I think it is just a little bit odd. The timing of this is odd. The fact that there's 1 more year left on the deal is odd. The trade value, I feel like it's not there anymore. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it remains to be seen. But appreciate you both, Alex and Nate, for coming on. We'll, I'm sure, have more. I'm sure we will hear more about this story as the week goes on. We'll probably get more from the Armadillos front office. We might get some clarification as to some of our questions, right? Why was this move made, right? So it would be nice to kind of get that. Was the move made because Darman is done and you're going to cut bait and he's out? Or is there something else that maybe we're missing? So it remains to be seen. I'm sure we'll get more news later on in the week. But appreciate both you, Alex, and you, Nate, for coming on. Guys, if you're not already, follow them on Twitter, on X, Alex at RFL Focus and Nate at Chrome RFL. You guys probably have seen them in the Discord as well. So be sure to check them out. As breaking news comes across the wire throughout the season, we will be trying to get together and give you guys more of this content and provide you with more of the breakdown and more of the analysis and insight of these stories as they come available in real time. So again, until that happens, until next time, thank you again, Alex. Thank you, Nate. And enjoy the games tonight, guys. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.